Students and faculty, and I don't propose to answer what I do today, but I think maybe this convocation will give you a better idea as to the direction that Augsburg is taking, both curriculum-wise, student involvement-wise, and perhaps in our relationship to the total community as an institution. The temptation for people in this age is to define too simply and too peripherally the issues that confront us as a people in the urban setting. Many people feel that if there is just law and order, then everything will be all right, and conditions will return to what we formerly have called a peaceful time. We must be very careful not to judge issues and situations just as they appear to us on the surface. With this in mind, I think a Halloween story might be appropriate, with Halloween now coming in the month of October. A man was left alone on Halloween night by his wife, and she supplied him with a goodly quantity of trick-and-treat candy. It was all put into a basket, and as the doorbell rang shortly after dinner, he took the whole basket to the door and allowed the boys and girls to pick out the candy that they wanted. Well, this continued for a number of calls, and each time, of course, the boys and girls seeing the basket would dig in as deeply as they could and dump as much as they could into the trick-and-treat bags. This finally got to the man. He became very irritated. He concluded that boys and girls are materialistically inclined, thinking only of themselves, and so finally, in complete disgust, he turned off the lights, took the candy that was left back into the kitchen, and went back into his study and turned on the television set. And there he sulked. There were a number of doorbell rings, but he didn't reply to any of them until finally, at about 9 o'clock, there was a last insistent ring. And it rang, and it rang, and it rang, and he decided he must go to answer one more call. As he came to the door, there stood a little girl, about 9 years of age, beautifully dressed as an angel. She had all the accoutrements on, the halo around her head, the white flowing robe. She had the smile of an angel, the long hair. Surely this was an angelic child, he thought. He couldn't resist her. And so with a smile, he turned and went back into the kitchen and scrounged around for what was left, and finally he found a caramel apple. He brought the caramel apple back to the front door, and she opened up her bag and he dropped it in. Whereupon she looked down into her bag, looked up at him and said, "Damn it, you broke my cookies." So I think it behooves us not to judge too peripherally what is causing conditions or outcries or change in the community in which we live. Over the years, institutions of higher learning have created the conditions that are now being challenged and in many cases altered. The year 1968-1969 certainly was the year for higher education. No longer was the university and college during that year able to exist as a detached examiner. I like the cartoon appearing in the September press of our city, which showed the academic dean and the president of the college huddled together in an office. The windows were barricaded, and on the desk was a self-survival kit. And underneath the picture was this caption, "It used to be the students that dreaded the opening of school." And I suppose the very fact that there were over 300 college presidencies vacant last year indicates the kind of change that is coming on the college and university campus. It was possible for the college and university for many years to exist as the detached examiner. And so professors and students alike would get out of the world to go into the classroom, to go into the study place. to dig for facts, to try to, in a detached way, determine the truth. The cloistered halls became the environment of the university and the college. Very slowly this changed on the American scene. I remember being at Temple University in 1963, the beginning of what we then called the Civil Rights Revolution. Temple University awakened faster than many universities in our country. It exists and lives in one of the worst housing conditions in the city of Philadelphia. Finally, in that year, it awakened. The university looked around itself and said, no longer can we sleep here. No longer can we build fences around our campus and lock the doors at night. What is our responsibility in this community to change the conditions that people are forced to live in? And so in a sensitive way, I believe, that university started to ask questions in the community as to how it might participate in social change. For you see, the world has come to the college campus in no uncertain terms. Dr. Frankel, in his book, Education in the Barricades, makes this crystal clear. He speaks of two issues, racism and Vietnam, as the issues that have come down hard upon the college campus to awaken everyone who is there, to convince us that we do not escape the world, but we live in the world while we are at the college and the university. And the students really are responsible in most cases for this awakening, for they are the ones who are asking the questions about the racist or non-human society that we have created in America. And they are the ones that are asking the questions about the immorality of Vietnam and the foolishness and futility of carrying on our present policy. And Dr. Frankel puts it this way in one of the concluding paragraphs of his book. He says that the university and college must connect with the students' wants and feelings, must connect learning with conscience, connect information with ideas, connect the campus with what lies beyond the campus. So no longer then can the university and college live as a protected, secluded examiner of the truth. Neither can the university continue to be a high-priced professional resource. Having lived in Berkeley, California for 2.5 years, I saw what happened to the University of California at Berkeley because it sold its high-priced academic resources to cities around the world. And so you would have urban environment men and people from every field going to New York and Baltimore and Washington and London and other cities as consultants, and very high-priced consultants at that. Well, of course, their expertise need to be shared with a wider community. But the tragedy was that the local communities, including Berkeley, never received the kind of participation from these individuals that they should have received. And so you had the ongoing festering sores of Oakland, California, which I feel needs more change than almost any major city in the United States. Oakland existing right next to Berkeley. You have Richmond and San Francisco and cities such as this that really could have used the services, the participation of these high-priced professional resources at the University of California. And again, it was the student at the Berkeley campus who really let himself be used in Oakland and other places that participated the most fully in community life. Today, I think, to move from the negative to the positive, we see the college as a respondent to the need for institutional transformation. And here I would speak specifically of Augsburg College. It was Cliff Johnson who taught a course in political science last year, who in a small discussion, and I'll never forget the discussion in October and early November of last fall, said, "The city has discovered Augsburg College, and Augsburg College will never be the same." There are curriculum changes that are coming on our campus that bear, I think, much promise, and we should know about them and help lead them along. And here I would say that the president and the academic dean have set a kind of spirit that opens all of us up to this kind of change. I'll never forget sitting in an educational policies committee last year and having the academic dean, not in the usual tradition of academic deans, say, this is a new ball game. And if you're playing in a new ball game, you must be willing to set different rules and experiment without always knowing how the experiment is going to end. And this freedom to move out, to innovate, to try freely new ideas, new programs, must be the spirit that dominates our campus. We are beginning to develop a consortium in urban studies at Augsburg. There are unique features about this consortium that I would like to emphasize. First of all, it's a cooperative venture. 11 private colleges have committed themselves to this Center for Urban Studies. It's an ecumenical venture. It includes Roman Catholic colleges like St. John's at Collegeville, St. Catherine's, and St. Thomas. Hamlin participates, a school of Methodist background. 5 Lutheran colleges are involved: Gustavus Augustana of Sioux Falls, Concordia, Augsburg, and St. Olaf. Bethel of St. Paul has now officially become a part of the consortium in urban studies. And Carleton has committed itself to this activity. Carleton is non-denominational now in support. So you have a variety of private colleges who have said, by becoming a part of the council for this consortium in urban studies, that we don't want to develop our program by ourselves, but we want to come together to pool resources to work on this common project. I see 2 beginning purposes for the Consortium in Urban Studies. The first would be to catalog what is already happening on the campuses, to see what teaching and student resources there are in each of the places, and to make available for the students and the faculty of each one of these colleges the unique features and programs of all of the colleges, a shared curriculum. Secondly, I would feel that a consortium in urban studies will be able to innovate new kinds of education that will stimulate in the urban environment as former curriculum has not. One of the programs that we would like to make a permanent part of the Consortium in Urban Studies is the Crisis Colony Educational Program. There have been 2 experiments now in what we have called the Crisis Colony. One carried out a year ago this last summer with a small number of students in North Minneapolis. The last was a more ambitious venture, directed again by Joe Bash of the American Lutheran Church. It again was in North Minneapolis, but consumed the whole quarter last spring, where almost 20 students, most of them from Augsburg, lived together as a colony and let the community become the teacher and the community become the classroom. I will make no further comments about the Crises Colony of last spring because we have a participant here who will share with you how he feels about it. But I would like to add that in a week or so, we are going to present a plan for another colony to be held this spring in the model neighborhood community in South Minneapolis. And one of the things we're going to suggest to the 11 colleges is that they each provide several students to the colony so that all of the colleges might taste and feel this kind of education. And we are hopeful that after going through the experience of a crisis colony model neighborhood, that this might become an ongoing educational experience for all of the colleges. And we might be able to offer the students of the respective colleges in the consortium the opportunity every quarter to come into a crises-type educational experience in the Twin City area. Keep this in mind as you plan your college curriculum. At this time, Wayne Sneva, who was in the crises colony in the spring quarter, will tell you what it meant to him.
Last spring, I had the opportunity to be in an educational experiment, the crisis colony, and I can't begin to tell you all that it's really meant to me. The colony started out as an idea amongst the experimental ministries people of the youth department of the American Lutheran Church. And it became a joint project with Augsburg College, beginning somewhat in the summer and then fully last spring, under the very capable leadership of Joe Bash. The colony was a group of 17 kids living together on the north side. We did things together as a group. We got involved in social events. We got involved as individuals through individual independent studies and things like that, working at the schools as teacher aides, or working with tenants groups, or working in the Montessori setup, or working at a youth center. We also did things in the nature of, we put on of religion. We put on a service each Sunday. We put it on at mostly churches out in the suburbs, mainly Crystal, as Crystal was one of our targets. We did a lot of things together. We did a lot of things independently, and I think we really learned something. We learned something about ourselves. I think, a lot of people are kind of critical of the, what kind of educational value can you get out of something like this? I think what you can really get out of it is about 60 to 70% of what I got out was really an awareness of who you are. You really get a deep look at just who you are and how you act, and it's really something. You also get an awareness of what's happening. You find out that there is a Matt Eubanks. You might even get to meet him personally. Chances are you will. You get to find out what the problems are of the poor people, the black man, other minorities. You really get a sensitivity to these problems. And then you get a chance to get involved. You get a chance to maybe try and right some injustices that you see. And I think one important aspect that's often overlooked but shouldn't be, you really get motivated. You get stimulated, I think, to do things in other aspects of life. For instance, you come back and you want to get involved in campus things. You want to get involved in religious life. I think you really want to get involved in community life. Just the fact that I counted 12 Augsburg heads down at a city hearing that the Commission on Human Rights had, I think is somewhat of an indication. They weren't there because they had to be. They were there because they wanted to be there. And I think you also get a motivation to go on to study further. I think you find out quite painfully sometimes how inadequate you are. If you're put in the position of being a youth worker or working at a youth drop-in center, you suddenly discover you don't know very much about how to lead these kids, how to teach them, how to do anything. And I think to a certain extent it motivates you to come back to college to try and find out maybe a little better how to do it. I'd like to say something about, the future of this. I really think it's a good thing. For me was one of the most fantastic things in my life. And I'm very, very glad that the college is going forward with another one. I had some doubts last spring, but I think enough people around here are fired up enough to do something. I like the idea of a consortium. I think, with someday maybe the dream will come true that Joe talks about all the time. Perhaps having 8 or 10 colonies every quarter in all parts of Minneapolis and St. Paul. And I really think that would be something. It would be something that I think would be very worthwhile. Thank you.
Wayne spoke of Crystal. He grew up in Crystal, so I guess this was an appropriate target for the Crisis Colony group. The Crisis Colony students or participants will be at the Student Center today along with other people from community organizations to speak to you personally about this kind of education. And I know they would like to have you ask questions of them candidly. What other changes are coming in our curriculum at Augsburg? Well, I'm not going to mention all of them, but a few have to be underlined just to highlight the direction in which we're heading. At the present time, we are running experimental classes at Stillwater and Shakopee prisons. And the unique thing about these classes is that there are 3 ingredients as students in them. Students from Augsburg College taking the class for credit, inmates, prisoners, and prison guards. I would love to be in the corner to get the kind of give and take exchange that must be happening in those classes. But I think these kinds of classes offer unlimited opportunities for our students to give them a new perspective, for the guards maybe to convince them of the humanness of the prisoner, and maybe to show them their own humanness. And for the prisoner, the plan now is to develop an opportunity for the prisoner to do research. And there might come a day when the prisoner would be able to earn a college education, even while he is in prison. This is a dream of this kind of curriculum. There is also the hope that this same kind of class can be established with students from the college and people who are now in the mental hospitals of the community. Mental hospital patients together with students studying in an actual college class for credit. We are also convinced that we need to pour new kinds of curriculum in the whole area of Afro studies into our life together. For those of us of the majority of the community, we will have to admit that our curriculum in the past has been starved of this kind of input, from the grade school through the high school and through the college. And we have much to learn in this regard. So I would speak as a majority person that Afro studies, Afro culture, yes, is for the black person, the black youth, the black adult, but it's just as much for the white person who has not been able to know this heritage. And so last year we established a relationship with the Way University, which emanates out of the Way in North Minneapolis. And an Afro-cultural history course was offered for credit and will continue to be offered for credit this year. The course is directed by Mr. Milton Williams. Some of you might know him. He was on our campus to speak of institutional racism last spring and also taught this course in Afro-culture for credit. Once you get to know Mr. Milton Williams, you never forget him. He has a way of kind of getting into your life with his spirit and his life and his knowledge. The Way University is expanding its offerings and continues to work with Augsburg College, and I think here again, this indicates our willingness and openness to experiment. This last summer, there were several courses offered to the entire community, one in white racism taught by Jim and Mary Tillman, 2 unusual persons who now live in Syracuse, New York. Jim is receiving shortly his PhD in community organization. For many years, he directed the Minneapolis Greater Faith Fair Housing Program. And Jim and Mary Tillman are uniquely equipped to speak of white racism. There was also a course in Indian history taught at Augsburg College for community people. The Jim and Mary Tillman course is being repeated beginning in October here at the campus for community people who will take the course for credit at Augsburg if they wish. Another educational curriculum experiment, but the kind of experiment which is affecting our life here together. I just received publicity this week on a Tuesday evening course called African Perspectives, which is sponsored by the African American Institute and also by Augsburg College. And as I looked over the list of resources that will come into this course on Tuesday evenings, I was astonished. Some of the finest resources both from Africa, the nations of Africa, and from the American scene. The very latest in audio-visual on Africa and in material. And this course is designed primarily for social science and social study teachers on the junior and high school level in Minneapolis and St. Paul so that they might get the additional kind of educational input that will make them more effective social science and social study teachers on the grade school, junior high, and high school level. But I would also add that this course would be open for others. And it is available for credit at our college. Very close to here, a few houses down, has been established the Minnesota Resource Center for Undergraduate Social Work Education. And although this is not an Augsburg College development, it certainly was spurred on by a number of people here at Augsburg College. They were key people in developing this new approach to undergraduate social work education. And for several years now, there will be a staff in one of the houses here on campus who will try to work on changing dramatically undergraduate education in social work. And as I read it, the whole emphasis is to get social work education again into the community, to allow those who want to go into this field to feel the pulse beat of the people in the city. This is a promising sign in the field of social work. There are people from our educational department and other departments at Augsburg who are very much involved in the development of an MAT program in teaching with St. Olaf, Masters of Arts in Teaching. And there are unique features in this program. For one thing, it will be open to students who have not majored in education, but who have suddenly decided they would like to at least try teaching. And as I have listened to these people as they have sat at meeting, I'm convinced that they don't want to follow traditional lines and patterns that educational courses have followed in the past. But they would like to, in a sense, put the classroom for the MAT program right in the community. A classroom in a school building next to a classroom where there are students in the inner city. And they are convinced that if a person is going to teach these days, particularly if a person wants to teach in the city, that there are other people who need to do the teaching of the prospective teacher. If a young person will be at Adams Grade School, which is close to our college campus and which other students will talk about in a short while here, should not the woman on ADC become the teacher of the prospective teacher for a considerable length of time? For how can any teacher understand the feelings of the young boy and girl who comes into his classroom out of that kind of an economic setting unless that teacher has listened intensely and with seriousness to the mother? Tell the prospective teacher what it means to live in this kind of situation, how she feels about her children, and what life means to her. Who teaches the prospective teacher these days? The whole community does. And this will be written into the MAT program in no uncertain terms. We've also established a relationship with the Model Neighborhood program. We have had several contracts now through the Social Science Research Center at Augsburg with Model Neighborhood. And one of our professors, Vern Bloom, a social work professor here at Augsburg, actually works in the Model Neighborhood program but still remains on our faculty. The Model Neighborhood is interested in establishing a Model Neighborhood Educational Center. This center might perpetuate a number of projects. It's talking about a dropout academy for students of high school age. It's speaking of a young adult counseling center. And hopefully the Model Neighborhood Educational Center will also be interested in developing the kind of crisis colony education for college students that you've already heard about and felt through Wayne Sneva. The Consortium in Urban Studies has a relationship now with the Model Educational Center, and we would like to be a participant as a consortium in the Model Neighborhood program. These are examples, then, of curriculum innovations, which really tells us that the city has become and is becoming increasingly the teacher and the classroom for all of us. That the campus and the city are one and one. Then I think we must remember that the student is also a participant in the human dimensions of the city. And he's not a participant in a paternalistic way. I think one of the advantages that young people have today is that they can more readily be in the community without exuding the kind of paternalism that has afflicted so many of us. It's not a matter of saying, what can I do for you? It's much more being a presence and really learning from the city. And if a student enters with that kind of spirit or learns it, then he also is able to render a significant kind of service along the way. A comment by a student here at Augsburg just last week as he came in to talk really makes sense to me. He is a sophomore. He's majoring in a science. And he said he has come to feel after a year and a half or a year and a few months of study just with the books that this is not enough for him. And he said, is there any place I can go just to meet other people, to establish a relationship with a wider community? And so I directed him to the Plymouth Youth Center. And you will hear about that too in a short while. And hopefully he will meet different kinds of people there and relate in a non-book way to life. And I see this not as an antagonist of what he is studying, but as a complement to what he is studying. And this will complete the student's educational experience. A variety of responses has come from our students in this regard. Just this last year, James Thomas, the president of the Black Student Union, and other black students approached the Board of Education of Minneapolis with the idea that the black students of the colleges of the Twin Cities develop a tutoring program, really sponsored by the Board of Educations of the two cities. This is the way it would work. Black college students would go into the inner city high schools where most of our black high school students study and would become tutors of black high school students at Central, at Roosevelt, at North High, at St. Paul Central. And then as the high school students became turned on in this new kind of relationship with the black college students, they in turn would move into the junior high schools of the area and relate to black junior high school students, who in turn, as they got turned on, would move into the grade schools and tutor with black grade school students. I think this has much promise as a voluntary program for the black students of the colleges of the Twin Cities. There are youth groups and after-school activities of churches that are trying to change their emphases, and these youth groups and these after-school activities need the volunteer services of college students. There are youth programs that are affected through the YMCA and Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts that are attempting to move with different kinds of sensitivity, and they are coming to the colleges for volunteer help. The schools themselves have dipped into the colleges for the kind of continuing education or extension education, which says that the grade school and the junior high and the high school are not just to be open during the day, but are to be open continuously for the people, adult and child, of the neighborhood. There are the community centers such as Phyllis Wheatley that are using college students in volunteer programs. With this in mind, then, I thought we could kind of personalize student involvement by reflecting about it through students and through those most directly involved. And one of the more unique programs of this kind is the kind of program that is effected through Adams Grade School, the oldest grade school in Minneapolis. You walk on the floors of Adams Grade School and every board creaks. But our students at Augsburg administer this program themselves, and they do it with effectiveness. By the way, I was told by the social worker and principal of Adams Grade School last spring that they have been so impressed by the relationship of Augsburg College students to boys and girls at Adams that they would like to see the day come when every boy and girl at Adams had a human relationship with a college student at Augsburg. Would this not be unique? A kind of binding together of a public grade school in the city with a private college. We have two students here from Project Friendship, as this program is now called, Sandy Bolstead and Rachel Iverson, and they will speak to you themselves about this project.
The purpose of Project Friendship is just as the name suggests, friendship. The group gives us as Augsburg students a chance to get involved in the surrounding community. We work with children from 2 nearby grade schools. The program involves being a big brother or a big sister to a little boy or girl. It is becoming aware of his or her problems and needs. Many times, all they need is someone to talk to and someone who can give them the attention they probably do not get at home. These inner city children are many times from broken homes or large families. Their homes often lack the attention that all kids need. Last year, I was a big sister to a little girl from Adams School. Her name was Pam, and she was in the 2nd grade. She is from a family of 7 children. Her mother was crippled, and her father worked until late every night. Consequently, Pam does not get to go many places or do many things. I saw Pam one afternoon a week all last year. We did things like going downtown and seeing Christmas decorations, going to the library and the museum, having picnics, and seeing movies. Last spring, Pam and I went with an Augsburg guy and his little brother to the Ice Follies. We also saw Augsburg's drama club put on The Wizard of Oz. But the things that meant the most to both of us were the afternoons we would just sit in the dorm and color or play games or watch TV or just plain talk. It was important for Pam to get away from her noisy, crowded house and to just sit and talk. We became better and better friends as the year went on. She opened up and became freer. I benefited also in that I got to know Pam, her family, and many of her friends, and I gained insight into the kind of community in which Augsburg is situated and the people who live around us. I hope that many of you are interested and will participate in Project Friendship.
In past years, this program was organized so that pairs of co-leaders from Augsburg could meet with groups of children from the neighborhood to play together, make things together, go places, or just talk and listen to one another. But last year, Augie participants were given the choice of meeting with just one child instead of a group in a big brother or sister relationship. Since this was the choice of most of the students, and since this kind of experience gives greater opportunity for a really close friendship to develop, one-to-ones will be the main emphasis of Project Friendship this year. Although co-leaders may still get together and meet with a group or pairs of grade school children if they wish. There are probably many of you who would enjoy having this kind of relationship with a child who lives in the inner city. And I know there are many boys and girls who, like Pam, really need and would enjoy this kind of friendship. The responsibility for the big brothers and sisters is to commit 1 hour a week to spend with the child and to keep this commitment all year long. It's important not to let them down in the middle of the year. If you'd like to have a little brother or sis at Adams or Irving grade school, that is, if you'd like to give your time, patient listening, and understanding, and in return, receive friendship, deeper understanding of children and life in the city, and the joy of this special kind of interpersonal relationship, please sign up this morning or afternoon at a table in the center where you can ask questions and get further information about Project Friendship.
I know what this means to you students, but I know that the boys and girls last year got so intimately involved in the lives of the students that they would come over during the week to try to find their big brother or big sister. And I kind of look forward to this unique happening where Augsburg College might be invaded by younger boys and girls. We have Dave Hansen here, who's on the staff now of the Plymouth Youth Center. The Youth Center has moved recently, and Dave has joined the staff recently. He also graduated from our college last spring, and I think he can speak most uniquely to the kinds of needs that Plymouth Youth Center has at this time.
As many of you may or may not know, as was just mentioned, Plymouth Youth Center has moved. For 14 years, they had their base operation out of 322 Plymouth Avenue, which was in the heart of a target area in North Minneapolis. The freeway is taking that building, and so they were forced to move. And now we're up on 2301 Oliver Avenue North. The change brings about many changes within the structure of the community center. We have to adopt our program or change our program to the needs of the community that we're now serving. Formerly, as I said, we were in a target area. Now we are in a fringe area. When Plymouth Youth Center moved, they made a commitment, however, to two schools that they were serving near the Plymouth Avenue area. Those schools were Hall and Franklin Junior High School. Right now, we're very, very close to Lowell School and Willard School. And so what we have to do is we have to try to institute a program that will serve all three of these schools. Okay, this is how we have proposed to do it for this year. We're working in conjunction with the Minneapolis Public School Systems and their extended school day program, and we're trying to plug in most effectively. Okay, we're doing this by establishing a Big Brother, Big Sister tutor program. Now, this tutor program will be carried on throughout the school year. People participating in it will be high school juniors, seniors, and hopefully college people. We're also organizing and forming club groups and special interest groups, kids with interests in photography, art, cooking, ceramics, photography, whatever. Wherever we see the need, we're trying to plug in with the adequate person to lead the group. Okay, now what we need for this, then, is volunteers to head up these programs. People to make a commitment for 1 year to spend at least an hour, either after school or on Saturdays with these kids. We need club group leaders for these activity groups. Also, in our community program, we're hoping to establish what we call a living room forum. And this will be a problem-solving discussion type group for high school people. We're also hoping to set up a community forum for parents, interested residents, to help us plan our action, help us plan the action that we take within the community. We could go ahead blindly and set up a program, but if it doesn't fit the needs or wants of the people, we might as well not have it. Recently, I've been out at many schools. We're trying to, or we are working with North High School, and North High School is going to be providing us with some tutors. Breck High School has some real positive things in the hopper right now. Breck High School has what they call the Quest program. And in this program, the students go out and work in an agency on a volunteer basis as part of their education through the year. Then in the month of May, they're released from classroom responsibilities to go out and work full-time in this agency. And, this doesn't only include community centers and this kind of thing. It can be, wherever the students' interests lie. But they have agreed to cooperate with us and help us in any way they can to provide tutors and club group leaders for us. All I can say is that I think here is a real opportunity for people, in a college situation to plug in and establish a relationship with an elementary school child on the north side. And we hope that it would be the kind of reciprocal relationship that we've been talking about all morning. Not only will you come to teach or to share what you have, but also we hope that you will come to learn what these youngsters have to offer. We will be in the center this morning and would be happy to elaborate more on what PYC is doing and the other areas of PYC. PYC is not only does it have a program in community, but it has a camping program, an encounter program, a kinsman program. And we'd be happy to talk to you on any one of these programs and happy to talk to you about the possibility of working as volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dave, and all of the students who have spoken so well. There will be, as you enter the student union, a number of tables set up, and representatives from various groups, including Plymouth and Project Friendship, Boy Scouts, also several churches will have representatives there to speak of their after-school activities. You will be given material, and you will be able to personally ask questions of those who are deeply involved. Very briefly then, in conclusion, the college really is a supporter, or should be a supporter, of social revolution. It is my conviction that every institution of the city must be opened up so that the power which is held only by one part of the city might be equitably distributed among all the residents. We are called not to be defenders of the status quo, but to be prophets of a new order in which human values have priority over property values. The primary hunger in our city is not for law and order, but for justice. Regardless of where others choose to walk, we here at Augsburg must take our direction from Robert Frost. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference.